Okay, great. Thank you everyone for joining us in this breakout session where we're going to discuss AR, MR, VR in AEC. We know the last day yesterday was, high level, how do you get started? And today in this session, we want to dive in a little deeper and give you some actionable insights to take back with you to really help you get started or to get out of, your pilot phase. We've got an expert panel here with me today. My name is Michelle Krogmeier. I'm the VP of North America for Proceedix. We're a digital work instructions platform. We work specifically in enterprise manufacturing. We work with the 4 smart glasses, and we work with AMA Expert Eye as our remote assistance partner. But I'd like each of the panel members to introduce themselves, tell us their role, a little bit about their company, and what they're doing with AR, VR. And then I'll open it up for some questions here in just a second. So, Brad.
Awesome. Good afternoon. My name is Brad Busick. I'm the Chief Information Officer for MacDonald Miller. We're a design build mechanical in Seattle, Oregon, in Portland, and I oversee all of our technology infrastructure, our marketing team, and our smart buildings team. And so we've been on the AR, VR journey for the last 3 years, equipping our service techs with AR devices, 150 of those guys running around. And then we've been dabbling in the VR space for about a year with a dedicated virtual reality lab, allowing our customers, our GCs, our owners to experience their building before it's built and interact with it. And I've had some really cool learnings along the way, but it's been a lot of fun to engage.
Thank you. John.
Good afternoon, John Rygg. I work for Kiewit Construction. Kiewit is a large construction company in North America. Easiest way to describe what we do is we build everything but homes. I work as a technology strategist. It's my job to go out and look for new emerging technologies and advise the company on what to do with them. So we look at AR, VR, drones, exoskeletons, kind of an inch deep and a mile wide. We were fortunate enough to be on the first wave of Microsoft HoloLens that was released. We had the first 2 out of 100 that were made. So we were able to work with that early on and really understand how we can use that in the construction industry to either help build or help sell some of our services.
Thank you. Dan?
Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Shirkey, and I work for Balfour Beatty. It's a similar company to Kiewit in that we're a global infrastructure and building construction company. I work out of San Diego and for our California division and in our vertical building construction operations. And my role is Director of Technology and Operations Improvement. So my job is to bring innovation and improvement both through technology and through process improvement within our business. We've been on our AR, VR journey for several years now. Some of the easiest use cases have been, or best use cases have been, just taking advantage of the consumerization of virtual reality technology, and so things like Oculus Rift and our ability to now easily bring building information models into a virtual space has been really instrumental in some of our recent projects, and it's really enhanced our ability to participate in the design and planning process.
Great. Anthony.
My name is Anthony Viscusi. I'm the Global Platform Technology Lead of the Buildings line of business for Jacobs Engineering Group. We're the #1 ENR ranked design firm for the last 2 years. My role is mainly to investigate innovative technologies for building design and planning, and also execution of construction projects. We mostly have invested in virtual reality technology to date, but we're slowly dipping into augmented reality and other technologies in an effort to improve our consulting delivery to clients.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Allison Yanites. I'm the Immersive Technology Lead for Arcadis. Arcadis is a global natural and built asset firm. So we do work with design, engineering, project management for projects ranging from oil and gas manufacturing, chemical manufacturing, infrastructure, agencies, municipal water departments. And my role really is to look across the board at where we're using augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, reality assist, or remote expert technologies, as well as other technologies that fall into similar digital spaces like 360-degree reality capture and scanning and drone technology. But looking at where we can really make a difference and find some value in how these tools are improving the way that we're running our projects, how we can work with our clients to give them some new ideas and some new solutions.
Great, thank you all. So coming off the last presentation, I know the panel members have been really excited. 860 HoloLens deployed is an extremely high number and really surprising. Knowing where you're at today, how long do you think it will take you to get to that quantity of devices? Is that even realistic or applicable for your use case?
For MacDonald Miller, we're nowhere near the size of ThyssenKrupp, and I don't know that very many of you in this audience are also as well. I think when you think about the market cap for them versus us, we'd be happy to get to 300. We're hovering around the 200 mark now, and for us, it really depends on the value. Meaning, if my customer is not willing to pay for it, I'm not going to go out and buy another 100 just to be able to say that we have it. As we've talked with a lot of colleagues here, it's really interesting. Everybody's still pretty early in the journey, and we're learning what's working and what's not working, and we're sharing. I think both the people and the process and the technology fixes, and that's been really helpful. So I don't know that we'll ever be at that scale, but we're certainly growing our footprint.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I also think it's a matter of the technology evolving too. At Kiewit, we got into HoloLens very early on, really to understand the technology and see where we can use it and how it can be used. We know it's an evolving technology and it's going to get better and easier to use. So we haven't made the 850 HoloLens investment early on to that, but I think finding the areas where it can be used was important for us. And now we can get to the point when they come out with the next generation that will be more comfortable and easier to use. We can get to a large number like that. I don't know if we'll ever get to 850, but it'll probably be a while.
Dan, Anthony, anyone want to jump in on this?
I think our largest deployment is looking like it might be around 100, just per design office is kind of how we approach things. We'd like to deploy modular environments, and because this is disruptive technology, it's best to work in kind of small pods when you're deploying it, so that it's controllable, and you kind of create this organic network within an office around a new piece of technology. And then if their demand gets to the point where it's so high that you need to make an additional investment, then you can easily ramp that up with IT in support.
Okay, great. I did want to poll the audience just to see where everyone is at. Raise your hand if you've purchased over 5 devices and are actively experimenting with them. Okay, great. How many have purchased like 2 to 4 devices and are just getting in the pilot phase? Okay, great. And who here is just looking to learn how to get started? Okay, fantastic. Okay, great. So where I want to go next with this is, having people use them actively and get the most value out of this. This question is for John. John, describe how your process has changed at Kiewit with the BMI models, and where have you seen some great value?
So in construction, we use BIM models, building information models, which are basically 3D content, which is great from an AR, VR world, because we don't have to create the content. We don't have to create the worlds. The architects and engineers already do that for us. Early on, when we had the Microsoft HoloLens, it basically shipped with an ability to see ballerinas and floating astronauts. Not very useful for construction. So we had a challenge to be able to get those building information models into the HoloLens, and a lot of the times they were actually too good. So you had to dumb them down and make them more simple in order to get them into the HoloLens and make them usable. So we had developers and people on staff that we formed a team to be able to bring that content back into the HoloLens. And the first thing we did was a bridge that we took, and it took us about a month to get the bridge in. It was really horrible. It was green and kind of small and kind of hard to see, but it was really amazing to us to be able to see that. And the designer of the bridge actually got a chance to see that, and he was blown away. He's like, "That's my bridge." And but now the HoloLens is advanced enough to where it's really what I consider a production-ready device. We can give it to somebody in the field, give them software. There's a third-party software that plugs into Navisworks or Revit, the CAD applications. They can go in and basically export, and within 3 steps and maybe 10 minutes, get the application or get the building information model into the HoloLens and be able to use it and have a lot of functionality to interact with it. So right now, it's really a production-ready application compared to where it was 3-4 years ago.
Interesting. And now, so Allison, you are using at Arcadis AR VR for 2 different use cases, quality assessments and remote assistance. Can you tell us where you found the fastest ROI and how that has improved health and safety in your construction environments?
Yeah, so I'll talk specifically about the technology of remote expert or remote assistance, which we're using on hands-free headsets as well as with mobile devices. But the fastest, the biggest ROI that we see immediately, or the project sees, is the cost reduction. So in many cases, we are looking at, well, either it's travel that would normally happen from our project teams traveling to this site to do a construction assessment, that not all of them need to be done in person, but certain milestone quality assessments would historically be done in person. So the cost savings of those trips are immediate, but even on project sites that aren't even as far away, maybe they're within the city limits, you would have people traveling back and forth to that site regularly to look to check measurements, things like that. Even that cost of labor hours over time is added up by replacing the physical site visits with virtual site visits. So having a communication line, a see what I see, a real-time video feed where you can record and take pictures and document all of that. In addition, though, there's a big health and safety component to it. So I've talked to one of our construction managers, mentioned, I have people coming and visiting this site quite regularly. They come in, they're not as familiar with the site, with the risks in different areas of the site. Even if they're familiar, there's a chance for hazards, slips, trips, and falls. So being able for those people to all visit virtually, very easily can get all of the information that they could have gotten with an in-person site visit, is eliminating hazards right there. So that's a big health and safety mark for us. Also, the ability for our staff who are using the device in the field to use the hands-free version, wear a headset and communicate in real time with that headset, is alleviating them from any issue if they, versus using a handheld device. They can wear all their PPE, their gloves, their lenses, their safety glasses, everything they can wear, and then have the real-time communication, without interfering with any of that. And finally, just being able with the see what I see environment, that communication can bring more people to the site virtually. So you have more people assessing risks, answering questions, increasing speed of decision making. So that all has a big return on investment for us as well.
Okay, great. And Anthony, because you work in, Zone 1, Div 1 environments, how has it impacted your workers?
Yeah, so frequently in consultation with the client, then we've adopted BIM, obviously, and we use our modeling strategies to try and identify high-risk areas, but then we'll frequently walk with the client or the facility owner or someone who's familiar with the space for renovation work. We'll walk them through virtually in order to identify if all the appropriate risks have been denoted correctly in the model, and we've placed equipment appropriately, and we've got appropriate work access. But one thing that we identified early on is this is a conversation. Our senior design leads and our project managers were very sensitive to the interaction that they needed to maintain with their clients during this process. So we quickly adopted Windows mixed reality headsets because a lot of them had a hinged visor, which made it very easy for us to flip it up real quick and not completely disrupt their experience so that we could communicate with them and then kind of get them back into the virtual world. So I think that's something to be cognizant of when you're selecting hardware in general, is how you interact with your client.
Great, thank you. And so, sticking with driving user adoption with these devices, Brad, your bio on the website says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Intentionally, we double down on building an incredible culture. How have you used VR, AR technology to, proliferate this technology throughout and add value, both internally and externally to your customers?
Yeah, I love that quote, not because it's a super academic and sexy quote to put on a website, but we actually try to live it. And that means we'll try things and they'll bomb, right? So the blessing of being on the bleeding edge is that sometimes you're going to bleed, which means you're going to waste money. The technology you buy is not going to work. And I see a lot of nodding heads going, oh my God, that's us. He's talking to me. This is what it means for us at MacDonald Miller. We will try something. A previous panel that I heard earlier said, well, we just don't really want to disrupt the business. I absolutely want to disrupt the business. If you're not doing that, then why the hell even pursue the project? The goal is to get an ROI. The goal is to actually optimize, save money, or make money. And so we do that intentionally. And when we go after an AR scenario or a VR scenario, we specifically pick areas that we think are ripe for disruption, and then we deploy. And the most recent opportunity for us was being able to take a look at all of the change happening around your organization. Most of you guys in this room are either recipients of changes that are being given or made for you, like the way that you swipe into your building, the way that you log onto your computer, the way that you have to change your password every 3 weeks. Those changes add up, right? So if you actually happen to pick a group that's already saturated with change, there's a high probability that your change initiative, whether it's a brand new VR solution or something as simple as a reorg, is going to fail because our change elasticity, or our ability to respond in a meaningful way when you're already buried with change, is low to very low. And so we are very intentional about when we pick a project and how we pick a project, ironically using software to determine how many change initiatives are happening across the organization. And this is an online SaaS platform. It's called Change Analytics. It's by a company called 71 and Change. You can go out and sign up for it today. Super easy to use, but it gives our executive team the ability to say, you know what, that's probably not the best place to deploy that technology right now, because look how buried this team already is.
And that's interesting. We run into a lot of customers who have pilot fatigue. I'm sure customers you guys have experienced that. So it's a good way to have a data metric. And I think that's also something that's very interesting with AR, VR. There's new data out there that you didn't have before, and you can leverage it in very interesting ways. So this question is for Dan. Can you describe a little bit about your data journey at Balfour Beatty and what you've been doing for the past 3 years?
Yeah, so I think this journey is not so directly tied to wearables, but I think it's very relevant in that there's some things we've learned along the way that is probably going to replicate itself as we continue to transition. But we've been on a kind of a big data journey at Balfour Beatty for at least the last 3 years. Who in the room only uses one software platform on any given project? Yeah, not a chance. And any given project for us, it's probably 6+ different softwares that our employees have to log into, access, or interact with across any given team. So about 3 years ago, we took a leap of faith, and I mean that because it's a bit of a chicken and the egg type of situation when it comes to data visualization for companies. We didn't have good data visualization tools because our data was inconsistent across our entire business. And our data was inconsistent across our entire business because we didn't care, because we couldn't visualize it. We didn't have a tool to do that. So actually, our operations VP at the time kind of took a leap of faith and said, we are going to get there. We're going to get to a point where I can look at any given project across the United States and be able to have a good temperature test as to its performance. And so we're using a platform that scrapes data across 6 or so different platforms for us. So that includes HR solutions, CRM, our job management systems, our field-based applications, probably our timesheets as well, and it automatically gives people access based upon if they are on the project. And does anybody do monthly project reports? Yeah, we were probably having our project managers burn 5+ hours a month at least, reprocessing the same data that already exists just so it's palatable for management. And instead, we've now automated the monthly project report to where it's completely there, already completed, and the team just needs to interact and comment on the data. And what that's doing is not only does the team gets to verify that the data they're interacting with is accurate, and that data is flowing all the way up to our CEO based in London. And now we're getting to the point where we can start to do leading indicators and look at things like what are common statistical anomalies that are going to indicate that this project is trending towards a bad direction. And so some of these things, there's a leap of faith, I think, associated with data, and if you don't give yourselves good solutions to visualize it, you're never going to get there in terms of having that data. And I think when we come to wearable technologies and whatnot, you're going to realize it's a two-part scenario there. And then and so there's that's the challenge we face with regards to our solutions today, and it's been a journey, and we'll be continuing to go on it for a while now.
Speaking of challenges, there's all types of interoperability challenges, when working with legacy systems. So Anthony, tell us a little bit about how you have handled those challenges at Jacobs.
So yeah, we have a pretty siloed buildings group because it's been a product of acquisitions for numerous years. And so we frequently have to adopt custom solutions to get data interoperability to work the way that it needs to. And there's risk associated with that, of course, which is why any software tools that are coming off the shelf that provide for increased import-export, they don't put us in a cloud silo of their own, is what we're really looking forward to, because then I can deploy it very easily across multiple offices and not worry about interoperability concerns. So kind of a tip to software developers out there is you can't put large companies in a box because we've already got such big interoperability problems, basically. So yeah, we literally cannot subscribe to like a private cloud service because it's not feasible for us to maintain that over years.
Very good. And Brad, using the data in real time to make decisions, you shared a story about how you started testing devices in the hallway of MacDonald Miller, and now you have a virtual reality lab. Give us an example or share us a story where the virtual reality is creating compelling visuals and experiences for your clients and architects that you would not be possible with 2D.
Sure. So full transparency, I don't love buildings. And that I might get hear the shotguns click for everyone in here that's an engineer. I'm not a construction guy. And what I underestimated was the power of our customers seeing their building for the first time in VR. And it's kind of like like when my wife saw our little girl be born, I was like, God, it's kind of ugly. Like babies are ugly. She's like, it's so beautiful. It's the same way with building owners. And when we built our M Lab, watching the head of real estate for Microsoft come in and look at their $4.5 billion campus that we're building, and he saw Satya Nadella's office for the first time, you would have thought he was holding his newborn baby. What was powerful about it wasn't just that he could see it. What was powerful was that he could actually interact with it, meaning there's a piece of duct that he didn't want in a certain spot, he could pick it up and move it, and it could calculate labor and material for him in real time. I told the story in the same exact room yesterday with a hospital customer of ours who wanted to have a step count. How long is it going to take to get down to my emergency room from his helipad? And he did that, and it took 1 minute and 36 seconds to get down to the hallway. When he turned the corner, the architect, who's in the back of the room, said, hey, can I get a measurement of this hall? And we found out that the hallway was not big enough to get an ER bed through. Pretty important thing to find. We're mechanical, right? That's way out of our jurisdiction, except we made the GC look like an absolute all-star. He picked up the wall and moved it, and again, it calculated labor and material. To find that stuff early in the construction process is outrageous. And we're continuing to double down, not only in that physical space in VR, but extending that collaboration capability to the field. so that the guys in the field can actually work with us in real time, so you don't actually have to physically be in the same spot.
So that actually leads me nicely to my next question is, in a virtual reality lab, it's a nice consumed space where your Wi-Fi works, you got the best speed, but what about when you get out in the field and you're in the middle of nowhere? Allison, how have you worked with connectivity challenges?
Yeah, so out in the field, so we're using similar services that have been brought up already with looking at our BIM models, our 3D models out in the field, and other services that rely on a cloud connection to whatever that database is that you want to pull up and see out in the field. So whether it's a 3D design in augmented reality, or if you're, we have databases that we update, we collect data in the field, and that data is going into a system, whether it's a form or onto a map, and that's synced to a cloud database. So definitely run into issues where the connectivity of that can be a challenge in the field. But fortunately, I think a lot of providers of some of these services are moving towards being able to do some of these actions offline in an offline mode, which is really important. So like we can sync our augmented reality 3D models onto the device that we're going to use them on, whether it's a HoloLens or an iPad or something. So that when you get out into the field, you don't need a connection to be able to see that model. Same with other platforms. You sync everything before you go out. You can add information to that platform while you're out in the field without that connectivity. And then as soon as you get back to it, you can sync it back. So that's been really helpful. And then there are certain situations where we require the cell connectivity or the Wi-Fi connectivity, like for real-time video communication. And for that, we've just looked to see, in advance of going out to a location, what service provider has the best signal in this area, and kind of working with how we can set up a network or use a hotspot that will provide a good connection in that particular place. I did also want to comment too on the last question, if that's okay, about virtual, or I can't remember what the question was, but I had a thought about some of our clients. We've had a lot of success with virtual reality and design visualization at really low-hanging fruit level of viewing a design, like a 3D panorama of the design with like a Google Cardboard or other stereographic glasses, which is funny because, as you get into it and you're exposed to more VR, just know about what's possible with like wired VR and other headsets, you think, oh, like that's so easy, and it's I don't know, it's just it's not that cool. Or, and anyway, but it's so easy to deploy. And we've had two things. A lot of people love it. They love how easy it is. Anybody can access these panoramas on their own phone and have this mini virtual reality experience. And it kind of opens the door to maybe that next step of, well, okay, now I can see, even with this little Google Cardboard, I can have a really good idea of what this design looks like, and then kind of explore, okay, let's see what else we can do with this virtual reality technology. So I just had that thought.
I do want to add on there because I completely agree with what Allison and Brad have been saying, and then I just wanted to also kind of echo John's sentiment that what used to take us a month or weeks to process models and bring them into a virtual reality environment now takes minutes because it's kind of plug and play, and that's huge for us because when it comes to construction, when it comes to design, you want people to be as closely connected with the most current information on a project. And if we have to process something for 2 weeks, it doesn't work well because the design's changing constantly. So that's been a game changer for us in that we don't need to have people that are experts in gaming software to visualize and put our 3D models into VR. And so that's been a game changer for us there. And then, and also, I will just say the immersivity of VR in itself. We've used virtual reality on some jails we were designing, and we were on this project in the design phase for about a year, and we finally brought VR out to the project site and brought the chief and some of the future operators of the jail. And they brought, it was better to have them then, but still, we could have had them earlier. A ton of design changes in this meeting, because what the reality was is they were so much more engaged in that meeting, and they could so much better understand their building due to the nature of scale and how it works in a virtual environment, that they started to notice and catch things that we probably wouldn't have caught till out in the field. And we're using masonry block walls that probably would have been impossible to fix or cost prohibitive. So huge opportunities and low-hanging fruit in that we can bring our building information models out there directly into VR. And then the last thing is the mobile VR. It's maybe not as sexy, but Rudy, one of my colleagues in the audience, he's working on the largest public-private partnership in the country right now. It's the LAX Automated People Movers Project. And we'll actually be delivering a virtual reality experience to the general public, where they'll be able to walk up to the construction site, scan a QR code, and see 360 panoramas of the future facility that they're building, this $20 billion overall project. They get to at least understand some of what their tax dollars are at work. And we've seen a lot of opportunity in that, the consumerization of tools and what that's done for our business, both with tablets, and we see it with mobile devices too. And that's a huge opportunity, and maybe it's not as sexy, but getting it in more hands and more people interacting with it's gonna have a huge opportunity for us in the future.
Great, thank you. And so, since we're talking about the future, what are you guys most excited about? What is going to enable the proliferation of AR, VR, and what do you think will be the biggest drivers for change and adoption? Anthony, you want to start?
Yeah, I certainly think that the headsets are getting really interesting in terms of field of view and resolution. That's definitely number one. Was the prohibition for us was like, they don't want to look into this little tiny screen. So now that we're getting larger field of views in 4K and wireless technology, it's making it where we can more readily approach people to try the technology out. But I'm interested in data capture in the respect of the qualitative feedback that we're obtaining. So anything that you can do to scope the design reviews more accurately, or to present the environment quickly to the user was perceived very well, because a lot of times our clients would almost get distracted by other stuff that maybe the architect didn't want them to focus on at the time. So yeah, it was like, what is that? Well, no, don't look over there. We haven't finished that part of the building yet. So you kind of need both at times.
And John, what do you think?
Yeah, for me, it's I think the immersive experience. I think we've talked a lot about examples of being inside a model and finding issues with it, and that's something that's you kind of discount, is being in the immersive experience. You're always talking about going further with it and working with it and doing quantitative things and data, but I've had experiences where we've walked architects through their own building that they've designed immersively in AR. And they found things that were in the wrong spot, and they didn't realize it until they were inside of it. And I think the more immersive you get with a better field of view, maybe even some of the haptic feedbacks, being able to understand how to interact with your environments or in training perspectives, that's what really kind of excites me is getting a better experience, I think, with devices that are coming out.
Okay, great. And then lastly, if you were to describe the best way to get out of, pilot fatigue phase, how would you help this audience move forward and then go from pilot fatigue into a successful implementation? What have been your key wins over the past 3 years?
Is that open to anybody, or?
Go for it.
I would say the number one tip I have, is remember who your customer is. Being a contractor, oftentimes we're completely focused on sales and focusing just on the owner for our building. But I think as a technology leader within my business, my customer is also the field employees and our superintendents and the people who've been working in the field for 40 plus years. I need to be able to communicate to them and sell them on this technology. And if I don't do that, we're never going to be successful in implementation. So find out, maybe there's a big picture strategy you want to do with the technology, but you need to pick the pieces of it that you can sell to them, so they're good players in that environment. And that was something we had to deal with regards to digital documents, for example, getting our superintendents to use digital plan sets, and we had to make it very stupid easy for them to and really want to use the digital plans. It saves us hundreds of hours in that they're participating here, but they don't necessarily care about that. They care about themselves, and if it's not broke, don't fix it mentality. And so you need to figure out what makes them tick and really hone in on that as their customer.
And speaking towards scoping, like the pilot work, it's definitely, you have to pick the appropriate size project, the appropriate duration. Ideally, the team would be internal. And if you're the one responsible for developing the work process, you need it to go from planning through execution all the way through. And you don't want that to take 3 years, because then you won't be able to write your entire scope of work process. So unfortunately, it's got to be pretty much a short-term project that has adequate opportunities identified for using the technology, and then you can work closely with one team, develop the work process, and distribute it effectively and train others.
I'll jump in just from the perspective of maybe piloting, similar technologies to figure out which solution is the best, for that particular use case. And, at some point, just picking one, and yeah, maybe it's past pilot, but it's a small project, and you figure out, okay, this is gonna get us going. And I think that's really important to make that small investment just to start, because then once you're really using it, you can start to really pinpoint where, what issues do we have with this, and then maybe pivot and look to see if other providers would address those better, but after you get more data back and more feedback of that use. And the technology is changing so rapidly, in the last several years, 3-4 years. Every month it seems like there's a new product somewhere in this scope of technology, and so there's going to be more options going forward. So don't lock in too much about, well, what if I picked the wrong one? Well, maybe you did, and it doesn't matter. You still learned from that data feedback, and you're able to move forward more informed.
Yeah, Daniel used the S word, which I loved, which was strategy. We don't have IT projects at my company. We have business projects that may or may not use technology. So my favorite line from the previous CEO from ThyssenKrupp, who said, we just kind of lock IT in a closet. I actually love that. And that might be a little bit weird for the CIO to say that. And yet, if a project is driven out of IT, it's highly probable that it's going to bomb. If a project is driven by you, the VDC manager, and you might need IT to help lift that, it's a different outcome. And so if you can articulate the capability you want to get, whether it's data visualization, data capture, asset correlation, those are capabilities that a business needs. And starting there and then figuring out what string to pull has been, frankly, the only way that we've been able to move the needle at MacDonald Miller.
Fantastic. So we got about 7 minutes left, and I wanted to open it up to the audience for questions. Gentleman in the yellow shirt. Do we have a mic?
He'll yell at you, and if you can restate it.
Okay.
So, besides being on the consumer side of the technology, are you guys developing or customizing any of the discussed technology based on your own needs?
In terms of hardware or software?
Anything, any field that you're already using the technology for. I believe it won't be 100% match to what is your exact need for that specific purpose. It should be optimistically around 80-90%. What do you do with that last 20-10% of your specified needs? Do you develop for that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as software goes and developing your own technology and working with that, with Microsoft HoloLens, as I said, when it first came out, there wasn't anything for it. So we developed applications and demos and proof of concepts in order to bring the software in. We're a construction company. We're not a software company. We would much rather buy a third party and be able to use it. But we do prefer working with third parties that are smaller, that are really eager to work with us and we've had a lot of success working with them and giving them our ideas. They were very quick to make some changes for us and improve their product for us. So I think for our benefit, that's a better route for us to take, is to work with people in the business, especially now that it's a little bit more mature, instead of trying to recreate the wheel that other people are making right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question.
For the 3D augmented reality visualization? Yeah, so we're using the Visual Live. They're here. You can go visit them. We're using them and so this came up already too. We have designs that we do in Revit, and that's a plugin. They have plugins for Revit and Navisworks to be able to just push your models, and it's great. That goes back to not needing a development team for it. We work closely with them with issues that we're having that we can work with them to find solutions for, but gives our modeling teams the ability to do that on their own. They can visualize this and bring it to the site themselves without requiring others. But remember what I was going to say, but we do have software. We do a lot of designs in Bentley also, and some others, where we don't currently have a streamlined solution for that, for augmented reality visualization. So, I mean, that's certainly a challenge there, but we're using Visual Live.
It's a really interesting question. I just had this debate with our friends at Microsoft about the HoloLens 2. So we're a development partner for them. Autodesk, Microsoft, they want to be in the business of what they're in business for, which in the case of Microsoft, they want to write, they want hardware. They want to open it up to the ecosystem and let you do whatever you need to do. Autodesk is reallocating all of their development resources away from old school CAD and are letting the ecosystem come to them. And it's a strategic shift, which is why they've laid off 80 plus developers. So we've just taken the approach that we're going to have to look out to the third-party ecosystem to get some of that functionality we want, or we're just going to write it ourselves.
And I will say there are more coming. I mean, I know of developers that are working on it. Unity, for example, is working on a similar kind of thing that puts, the tools in your hands as a model developer to create augmented reality more easily than just learning Unity. Things like that are in the pipeline for a lot of companies. So I think we're going to see more of them come out and provide those solutions.
John?
Yeah, we had a team of about 5. So we first got the HoloLens. We created kind of a SWAT team of diverse people through different backgrounds. We were very fortunate to have one of the developers was actually a video game developer in his past lifetime and worked for HBO as well. So knew the Unity backend, knew the 3D modeling aspect of it very well. And the rest of us would pick up different areas of it that we could do. So now we have a full-time developer just doing Unity development, but that's ramping down as we get more and more applications that are third-party.
Anthony, do you want to jump in?
I mean, ours is primarily virtual reality focused, so we'll see that pretty much every team that's working on a project within a particular office that has VR available would be creating an Enscape model, for instance, and then they'll borrow the headset and go out and do the client presentation and come back, and the next one will be available. So it's gotten very wide adoption. Our AR usage is still in pilot phase right now, so we have a team of about 5 working on that workflow.
I think for us, we've got 75 engineers and 40 detailers. 10 of those engineers, this is their bread and butter. The gentleman in the gray shirt deployed this technology for them to take home. So nights and weekends, this is what they're learning and playing in. Average right now is it takes 4 hours for us to take that Revit file, convert it to a VR experience. And what we're finding that is that if it's ugly in Revit, it's really ugly in virtual reality. And so they're quickly learning to scale and give themselves enough prep time so that it's tight.
30 seconds for one last question. Okay. Oh, we gotta.
I'm an owner rep for Cook Children's Medical Center, and as an owner, there are changes that occur throughout the entire project, even while you're in the middle of it. So like in the middle, whenever the building's already being built, how do you use VR, AR to try to litigate potential change options that are occurring while it's going on, either through design option changes? So like, would you use VR with a combination of a laser scan of what's actually out there to try to see what is possible with what the owner would want to change or what?
Great question.
I mean, you have a good example.
Yeah, I'll take a quick cut at it. It's messy. As the build's happening, we've had owner reps come in, whether they want to change a finish on something that has nothing to do with mechanical, but to the previous point, sometime it might be architectural. When the building is done, we're using a platform, a digital twin platform called Willow that allows the owner to have a real-time status of the as-builts, and then anytime a TI wants to occur, you can actually get inside that model in VR and actually visualize what the TI might look like. So it's always up to date, and that's been really, really helpful for us as we finish projects and move on to the next one.
Anthony, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, certainly specifying that cloud scanning occurs on your project, I think, is a really good value add for the client to put out early and say that they would like that during the course of the project, because it's invaluable data that you'll never have access to again. Like behind wall scans and stuff like that is an immeasurable benefit to future design teams to have as a resource in future renovation work potentially or changes.
And I would just add that, make sure you're understanding the use case for that data and, are laser scans the level of accuracy you need, or would 3D photo capture or in photogrammetry meet your needs to know what's behind that wall? Because you might have a lot more opportunity to scrape and gather more data throughout the project with some of these lighter tools.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for our panelists for sharing all your information. Enjoy the show.